The economics of sustainability. Joining us for this week's Smith Business Close-Up is Dr. Rachelle Sampson, Assistant Professor in Logistics, Business and Public Policy. Thank you very much for being with us. Why should companies focus on sustainability?
Well, there are a couple of reasons for firms to focus on sustainability. The first is that the consumers demand it in some cases. Firms don't have a choice. They have to respond to market demand pressures. Another reason is obviously to be ahead of government regulation, which is coming on many fronts for many different industries, particularly energy, for example. But perhaps the most important reason to do it is to be ahead of competition, to think about new business models that firms can engage in to create new markets, and also just to gather the low-hanging fruit, as it were. There are many ways that firms can, say, for example, cut their costs by engaging in more sustainable practices.
Is that, you think, how companies, particularly in manufacturing, perceive sustainability, or how you would like them to perceive it?
I think that's perhaps how I would like them to perceive it. A lot of firms are sort of resistant to changing the status quo. And that's unfortunate because there are opportunities. Now, having said that, there are some firms that are truly at the forefront of sustainability and are really pushing the envelope. So there are some firms that are really the ones who are thinking about sustainability in this fashion.
Give me an example, if you would, and how it's benefited the bottom line, if it has so far.
Certainly. One example that is a nice illustration of this is floor carpeting, which is part of Interface, which is the name of the company. And now floor carpeting, the CEO a few years ago decided that he wanted to change the way manufacturing was done. Floor is a manufacturer of carpeting tiles. They decided to close the manufacturing loop for starters so that there would be no wastage in the process. And for example, old carpet wouldn't end up in landfills, but instead could be fully recycled by the company. They also changed their manufacturing processes to reduce waste and also to eliminate sort of toxic compounds that were emitted in the carpet as it was used and also as it was being manufactured. So better for employees, better for consumers. So this has done a couple of things for the company, that it's improved its bottom line. One, it's reduced waste. It eventually has reduced costs for the company. And third of all, and perhaps most importantly, what it's done is it's really reinvigorated the company such that we see higher productivity among employees. We see lower turnover among the employees. And people generally want to work for companies that are doing the right thing or that are very forward-looking. And this is not necessarily unanticipated benefit of being sustainable, but I think one that's often overlooked.
So it sounds like there would be an upfront cost to a lot of those initiatives, and the payback would come over some period of time.
That is typically the case, but there are big differences in that payback period. So how long does it take, for example, to break even on an investment that you're making? So you could think of all of these types of practices as investments. So some have very short break-even periods, like what we've heard of in terms of putting in compact fluorescent bulbs, that those pay off in terms of reduced energy usage at a fairly short period of time. Then you have longer-term investments, like completely changing, say, the manufacturing cycle or manufacturing process within a firm. And that's something that can take longer to do. Now, having said that, there is still often a lot of resistance to even engaging in the small investments that yield the return. Look at, for example, Walmart is now engaged in this practice of changing over to the compact fluorescent light bulbs. Well, that's one where they're going to break even rather quickly, but yet it's taken them a long time to get to that point.
What should the small business person who might be watching us think about this? That it all sounds nice, but happens in larger organizations, or are there things that a small company might be able to do without setting aside the day-to-day operation that they depend on?
Sure. Well, there certainly are, and clearly this is context specific, right? Because the recommendations for, say, a manufacturing company that, even a small manufacturing company that is heavily energy intensive, is going to be very different from the practices for, say, a services company that maybe provides janitorial services to a firm. So, for example, on the energy side, there's always, like I referred to before, this low-hanging fruit that firms can engage in terms of reducing their energy consumption. And any firm can do that. Even if it's just changing to the compact fluorescent light bulbs, you'd be amazed at what you can get from sort of insulation, for example, and also cleaning up a building from the inside, for example, using paints or carpets that have low emissions in terms of volatile organic chemicals to make a healthier, cleaner workplace for employees. And these are relatively small steps that firms can take, and even small businesses can engage in.
All right, Dr. Rachelle Sampson joining us from the Robert H. Smith School of Business. Thanks for your time.
My pleasure.